Jesus came to a Samaritan city called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired out by his journey, was sitting by the well. It was about noon. A Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone to the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have no bucket, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us the well, and with his sons and his flocks drank from it?" Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but those who drink of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I will give will become in them a spring of water, gushing up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water."
Well, Jenny, as we sit here in my office with this lovely hanging behind us, which I bought in China some years ago, picturing this story that we've just read, we're both still very conscious, just 10 days after the Christchurch earthquake when we're recording this, I guess, of the importance of water at the moment, and also the destruction of water. And these are themes that run right through the Bible. There's reference here about Jacob's well in the deserts, and those wonderful stories in the Old Testament of the importance of water. But I thought we could perhaps explore briefly two particular aspects coming out of the story. One is the water, and the other is the place of worship, which, although we didn't read it in this passage, it is part of the lectionary set for the day. And if people read on in chapter 4 of John's Gospel, they'll come this argument about where is the proper place to worship. So
I think the water thing, it's really reminded me, and I was thinking back in Israel and what a desert country it is, but of course here in New Zealand we're so used to turning on the tap and then suddenly for a whole city to be having to cart water, and it's
needing to put a few drops of Jik into the bottle to purify it.
Yes. So I think that perhaps that sort of then heightens for us what Jesus is talking about living water and being able to give the water that gives life.
Yes.
We've got we no longer take that for granted, perhaps
in quite the same way. And of course the water is such a strong biblical theme through the baptism, the cleansing, the washing away, and many of our churches do actually have a water stoop or at the entrance to the church, and just that little putting the finger in and making the sign of the cross reminds us that we are actually drinking of that living water, who is Christ.
Yes, and I think perhaps that's the other message when we've been thinking about buildings, and perhaps we haven't got that access to those symbols or things, but actually to think, well, Jesus is the source of that life, of that life.
Let's just look a little bit at the rest of the story, which, although we didn't read it, Jesus and the Samaritan woman, of course, they get into who's your husband and all that side, but they also get into an argument about where should we worship. Is it on the Mount Zion or the other mountain? And again, as we've watched the tragedy of Christchurch and the two cathedrals down, all those inner city churches down, and people now worshipping outside. Here in Wellington, just last week, or now when you watched this a few weeks ago, that vast crowd just across the road here on Parliament grounds, gathering to worship. And many, many people who probably have never worshipped or perhaps never been in a church at all in their lives, suddenly finding actually they need something of this living water, something that Jesus offers. And like the woman, she may not have understood it. I'm sure she didn't really understand. But give me this water.
Yes.
That I want something. You've
Yes.
got something that I
Yes,
want.
yes. And it's interesting how I was hearing something on the radio later that afternoon about saying how often in our society we don't have places or rituals that people can do that can help them to get together and express what they need to express. And we think of the hundreds of people who came into our cathedrals and churches to light candles as well. So it's like those things are important, but it's learning that sometimes we just have to meet outside, and that worshipping God in spirit and in truth can actually happen even without our beloved buildings.
Indeed, is actually what it's about.
Yeah.
So the living water, come to him who is the living water.
Jesus.